my first day of classes, and obviously all I'm thinking about is this paper. So I'm currently in between two classes, and I sat down to do some writing. I got inspired actually in my class because one of the people who's going to be grading my empirical project was there and was talking about the empirical projects. And suddenly I walked in and remembered that I actually have to submit this for a grade, and it's not just like a me thing because in my head it's been just a me thing because I started it myself like before school, like like almost over half a year before school started. So I haven't really been thinking about the grade and like the framing of the empirical project that much, but it actually was a good thing for me to think about that because it reminded me that even though I'm talking about neuroscience and computational modeling and stuff, my professors are all psychology people, and I was like, I need to frame everything in my paper so that they would be able to understand, and that actually inspired me because I was like, even though this is going to be computational neuroscience, it needs to be computational neuroscience for psychologists, because this paper is actually a psychology paper and it's still geared towards changing something within psychology rather than like, you get these really dense computational neuroscience papers that I do not understand in the slightest that are very focused on like the really specific mechanics of a certain part of the brain, or maybe more like really specific to computational science, like computational neuroscience rules, and like, oh, how do these types of rules work, and they're more in that zone. But I basically just went that route because I just was like, how do I get this project done myself? So I need to make it, it's gonna be like my inspiration now and how I'm gonna frame everything is that this is gonna be a computational neuroscience paper for psychology. And that means that I was really struggling last night thinking about the fact that exactly like some of these papers are very technical, and I get really worried that I don't have like the technical expertise because, well, it is my empirical project. I also do want to publish it, and I don't, you know, I can't just put out something subpar because, like, what's the point in that? And this is going to be my work. It's going to be out in the world and stuff. So I want it to be good, but I think it's not as important for me to be like. It's actually more important for me to make sure that everything can be understood, I think, by like a wider range of audiences than it is for me to get all technical jargony with it. So I think that's makes it better for me. I'm gonna pinpoint the parts that I'm confused on right now and just see like what do I think could use some extra support. And if I can't explain it very simply, then it's not worth putting in. We're gonna look through this like at the lens of like with my empirical project professors. I don't know them personally, but would they understand this? And that would be our guiding force. If it's seeming like, okay, this is like really wordy, then it's like a no-go. Then we have two different problems as well, which is where is this getting published? And I do also have to make it relevant and interesting for people who are into computational neuroscience. I think I don't know, like, actually when I first started this project, I asked ChatGPT like, because back then I didn't have any supervisor, so I had no idea how to do any of this. So I was just asking ChatGPT questions, and it said that I asked it to like critique me, and basically what it said is that a challenge that I could have is that it could be too psychology for the computational neuroscience people, too computational for like the neuroscience, too computational neuroscience for the psychology people. All these my concern now. It's like everybody, it needs to be relevant to like anybody who could read it. Everything is gonna be very well defined. That's like my goal. I've been in my most frumpy and weird girl energy of my life the last 2 years. Like, it's so bad. That's everything. Every time I'm at class, like I forget other human beings exist recently because I'm like, okay, I don't know, I'm just very locked in a way that I've never been before. And I just feel like nothing is as important to me as this. And I just am busy and all this stuff. So I've been so frumpy and quiet and just like all these different things. And every time I come to class, I'm like, I forget. Like, I think I just get cognizant of that. And I'm like, oh, I'm just really like, I don't know. I'm just in like this weird energy this year, but it's okay. Also, like, I'm going to send this to like my friends and my family when I'm done. And again, like, obviously I want to make it technical, but it's nice when you can send stuff to people and they can learn and they can actually like take something away from it. And hopefully one of my very best friends, she got her master's in psychology at Columbia, and she's very like, she inspires me a lot. But I'm like, I want her to be able to read it and like understand it, all this stuff. Where it's like, I want to be able to send it to people that are in psychology and they will get it, rather than it being like, okay, this is not for me. For example, I don't think that they need to know this. Well, actually, this is kind of relevant for me to talk about later when I'm talking about the rad study. Okay, I was going to talk about CA1. One of my questions yesterday was where do I put this CA1 thing? This. And I'm gonna actually, I think I'm actually gonna go into that. Like, I might spend a little bit more time talking about the impact of these different rat papers and what has been found. So, for example, one, so they found that the LTT and the CA1 was found, and then this has been thoroughly put back. I'm just wondering whether to make the acetylcholine part like a separate thing. So we'll get more separate references as a basis of episodic memory. And then I could go into acetylcholine secondly, like this. Like I think that just makes it neater. And then I can talk about everything here. And then it's like a speed run because I have to get back to class in like 10 minutes. The part that I think people are going to struggle with the most, because I'm struggling with it the most, is this. And I think that learning more is going to help me because I need to explain this in a way. This is a very technical part, the whole project. In theory, it's very easy to understand. I mean, I think the concept is pretty simple, but I keep reading and it's kind of hard because there's a lot of chemical stuff to it that I don't fully understand. And I just get lost in the sauce. And I think that this is the part where people have the potential to get lost in the sauce because I'm getting lost in the sauce. So I think that's the part that I need to do the most work on. The rest of it, I think, should not be that unfamiliar to anybody in psychology that has taken basic neuroscience or anything, because I learned a lot of this stuff in my class this year as well. So about the amygdala, about arousal, memory systems, and emotional systems, like I wrote about my paper. This part, I think, is one that I'm gonna like. This is the part that I think a psychology person could like be kind of confused on. So I gotta make sure I give like what is this explanation? What is like pattern separation? I think these will probably be discussed up top, like in the sharp-wave ripple part. But these changes seem kind of small. I feel like they're really adding up right now. Like my paper feels a lot more complete. I just want to make sure that my professors can follow the logic. That's like our number one thing. Can they follow the logic? If it seems like they would be able to follow the logic, I will assume that a general psychologist would be able to follow the logic. So now we know this is our biggest struggle right now. One thing I still need to read up more on is early and late LTP. Okay, we're done with our speed study because now I need to speed through my time and run to class. Had the most horrible trigger mid-class. I've never had this situation happen to this day because I've blocked this person almost everything, but I was just sitting there for the last 45 minutes, just like shaking my leg, trying to figure out like, how do I get back to baseline? I ended up just leaving class, but I was on my LinkedIn. I was like, let me go add some people to my network because I made like a post and I was like, oh, I should be more on LinkedIn. And I encountered them on like the recommended, and I just quickly X out. And oh my God, I hadn't seen their face in so long. That was so confronting to happen right after I posted a video just yesterday about like the story. And I think I was already like, I wasn't, when you lightly trigger yourself, but it's a good thing because you like work through it. I was kind of sitting with everything, and then I just went and I was like, no, not this person's face. Trauma is so hard because you can cognitively be in one place and your body can be in like a whole different place where it's like, okay, your mind, like mentally, I'm like, you are a clown. Like I saw their face and I was like, they are so clownish looking. We used to say he looked like Drew. That was his like nickname back when everybody started to see him as, actually no, he's the gecko who was toxic. But anyways, no, we're not gonna talk about it. But it's like, how cognitively you're like, you have no power over me and like you are a clown to me. But then physically the trauma's still there and you're like, oh my God. Where I was just sitting there like, it's fine, you're working through it, you are powerful, like you are smarter than this person, you are like kinder than this person, you're going further in life than this person, all these things. And then you can see them and like see that they look like a clown and they have clown energy and they're weird and all this stuff. And if they didn't have that little narcissist personality, nobody would ever like them because they got ditched by everybody within a year. But like your body is still just in a different place. They called him Droopy because he looked like Droopy the dog. That was before I even met this person. My general friend group gave him his nickname. And so yeah. But he thought he was like really, really like, the stuff, No.
Mr. Droopy over here on my LinkedIn. X'd out. Never show your face again. And then you just get mad at your body for having trauma. And it's like, how can you be so traumatized by somebody who literally looks like Droopy the dog? But it's like, that's just where you are. I was like, you know what? It's not worth it. I'm going to leave class. I'm going to stop talking about it now. I don't know, like, what do I do? Watch TV or something? But I've been reading this little devotional book that my grandparents got me. And I used to not resonate with this stuff much because, I don't know, it wasn't my thing. And I thought they were kind of corny, but it's been actually really nice. And this one's kind of more like liberal coded. Like, you know, I feel like it's very inclusive and stuff. And I really like that because, I don't know, it's just nice, I think. And that was one thing that stopped me from delving into Christianity was I just didn't see it as very inclusive. But it gives me peace. I was catching up because I've been kind of behind. And it was nice because this one was about using your gift for God. It was like very like, sometimes it's very time, like, you know, it's just what you need to hear kind of sometimes. And this one is about using your gift for God's purposes and how this person felt like they weren't smart enough or ready enough to be a pastor. And they were like, they're only this and that. Some of them work hard enough. They're only like themselves. And then the person they were talking to, he sat back in his chair. He was not a demonstrative man, but in that moment, his face was kind. I would be worried, he said, if you thought you were. He says, 30 or so years later, there have been many other times I wondered if I had what it took to do what God seemed to be asking of me. I'm still only me, but every time God has given me what was needed, trust and willingness. And that really resonated for me. Like, that was the first one I read today, supposed to be from January 7th, and it's like January 14th. But I was like, yeah, you know, because that's kind of like the dilemma I've been having, like, am I good enough writer, all these different things. And I felt really called down this path, and it really made me a spiritual person. So that resonated for me. It's like, just trust. Okay, I feel really sick actually, so we're done. And I'm just gonna, I don't know. Now that I'm feeling like a little bit less triggered, but I think when people talk about their spirituality, you know, I don't ever expect people to like believe what I believe or whatever. Like, I don't know. Spirituality is a process, and I have my own ideas about God. I don't think that like there's one way to worship or there's like one truth or anything. But you know, it's like when people share from their spirituality, I feel like you should always translate the love they're trying to share into the language that you know and the language that you have. But this one is actually so like, these have been so spot on for me. I just wanted to share this one because I was like, it's again, like all these have been like just what I needed to hear right now. So January 10th, prayer at the pit. What Joseph's brothers did to him was unspeakably cruel. But if you know the backstory, you might be tempted to think he deserved it. He was an inseparable kid, preening and vainglorious. Still, it's appalling that they left him for dead down there. No matter his personal flaws or his family's dysfunction, he didn't deserve the pit. Nobody does. If you read your Bible, you know that Joseph's story ends well. He becomes an Egyptian potentate, forgives his brothers, and lives happily ever after. What you may not know, because it's not in the Bible, is that in his old age, Joseph returns to the pit. According to an ancient Jewish commentary, Joseph stands quietly at the edge, peering down, remembering. Then he lifts his voice and prays, "Blessed is God who made a miracle for me in this place." What does he remember most from the worst moment of his life? Not the damage and the loss, but God's creative love. Not the cruelty and hate, but the life God brought out of it right there. No one deserves the pit, but if you're in one, Joseph wants you to know God's there too. And because that's true, its awfulness may become the stuff of better days. You probably won't become an Egyptian potentate, but you'll have your own miracle. You'll breathe again, love again, forgive and be forgiven. You might not believe it now, but someday when you revisit your pit, you will. Without forgetting the grief, you'll remember the present. Without ignoring the pain, you'll discern the love. Without denying the grief, you'll declare the gift. You'll lift your voice and pray, "Blessed is God who made a miracle for me." In this place, very accurate for me in these days and these moments, but yeah, these have just been hitting. Like, I don't know, they're really good. In case anyone like randomly is interested, it's called God is Still Speaking, 365 daily devotionals, and yeah, every single one has just hit. Like, I've just been like, okay, and I just feel like they're really good. They talk about really beautiful things. Like this last one was actually talking about segregation, and then there's some that will even talk about Buddhism, and I still have a deep relationship to Buddhism. I never have really fully stopped seeing myself as a Buddhist, and I don't think I ever will. But yeah, I really like it though. All right, I'm back home now, and I actually ended up working on the paper quite a bit after. Like, I just sat and worked on my paper for quite a while I was still at school, and then got myself Chipotle because I think I was also hungry and overcaffeinated, which was not helping me regulate my nervous system. And yeah, now we're back, and I've been getting kind of inspired to fix certain issues. So I'm gonna show you what I've done. I'm actually shocked at how quickly this is coming together now. Like, obviously it's still not like well written, but I did a lot of rearranging and planning and things like that, and kind of, I, it's not. I feel like I've been trying to kind of badly write things in through my own words as a simple explanation first, and then going back to try to find everything, because if I can't explain something in my own words at all, then I don't know enough. So yeah, I did a lot of reorganizing this acetylcholine part, just moving things around so that they're easier to sort of, like, they just make more sense logically, I think. Again, if things just sound really badly written, it's because I try to write it just freeform first, just like, this is what happens. So then I see if I know everything and like, what do I not know and everything. So I worked a lot on this section. I just moved things around, and I'm going to spend this section talking about choline depleting. And then I'm going to talk about the CA1. I'm probably going to go into that a bunch here. I don't remember if I said this morning, but I'm basically just going to split the rat study, kind of the findings from those rat studies up, and then back them with newer papers. It's really this entire little section that's the arousal section is very weak right now. I mean, it has lots of good info, but it's not done. I am going back and forth on this. This is still very, like, not that the best. I need to fix it, but it's basically, I was just thinking that maybe I would talk about, like, spend a little bit of time talking about dissociative amnesia again at the end of this section. I don't know if I want to do that, how I want to do that, and everything, and I need to think about what's actually accurate, but that's going to be there, maybe. I think it's not bad to bring it back to my theory at the end of each section and explain how that particular thing is actually impacting the theory so that people don't forget it, because it's kind of a lot of information. So I feel like the thing is that I don't want people to have to get all the way to the end to be like, oh, now that's how it works, because I'm trying to not rely on the fact that people are going to remember everything and then get me. So that might not be a bad thing, but I still don't know yet. And then I'm going to definitely talk here about, again, don't judge my writing, but I think I'm definitely going to talk about, this is how sharp wave ripples impact dissociative amnesia. And I'm going to talk about, this is one thing I thought about, is how these studies about pure extinction kind of demonstrate that sharp wave ripples can sort of be select, or that fear can kind of have this selective impact on trauma. I need to read up to make sure I understand that and if that's true, but that's kind of what I'm saying. A basis for the idea that deficits in sharp wave ripples could impact episodic memory, and that impact would have trauma-specific impairments that do not damage semantic knowledge nor future memory formation, I think. So I just need to double check. Because if that were not true, then the rats would just not be, they'd basically not be consolidating anything. And I do think that's why I think people with dissociative symptoms, a lot of times you do block out the actual trauma, but I feel like people tend to develop a general dissociation problem as well throughout their sort of day-to-day, where they just kind of have like a fuzzier memory of their day-to-day life anyways. So I don't think I'm going to mention that, but people probably overall have less are consolidating less information because they're more dissociated. But that's not my focus, and like, who knows, but I want to make sure I talk about if this is like trauma specific. I definitely want to mention this about how, like, what role acetylcholine has. But I keep going back and forth on whether to mention this or whether I want to talk about it in my results section. I want to talk in my results section maybe about the wider implications of this in like a bigger dissociation kind of realm. And yeah, this one is very, very like pop right now. It just kind of needs to be condensed, and then to read this. Yeah, so this is what we have, but I feel really solid about the way that I don't think there's anything more that I would need to say here. I just want to read more papers on fear extinction to back it. This is the idea that I had on my way home. I noticed that most of the time, people's papers, tend to cite the original, like the oldest version of like the originator of whatever the idea is, and then other papers. So like if they're talking about place cells, they definitely always cite John O'Keefe. Or if they're talking about synaptic tagging, they talk about, it's like X somebody and Morris. So what I want to do is I want to find the little sections and just remind myself to cite the original paper at each and every point, even if I didn't like, it wasn't like the main source of the fact, like, that wasn't the first time I ever read it. But I think it's just good practice, it seems, to make sure that you cite the original person. I mean, I should read the original paper anyways, but, I think I learned a lot. Like, I learned a lot about place cells from other papers, and then I did come back to place cells. Place cells are still missing here, and I think that's the only thing that I'm really missing with this, but I don't know how I want to... John O'Keefe's name should definitely be somewhere in this section. The sharp wave ripple section should have his name somewhere, because this is, like, a lot. His findings, like, really impacted all this. So I know that someone who really wrote, like, somebody who really knows what they're doing would probably cite him, so I should cite him. Because I noticed that across the board. This guy, he's kind of like, this is good. I'm going to, like, give myself, like, a little emoji. Good job, me. This is, like, a big name that I'm citing in Sharp Wave Ripples, so that makes me happy. And then this guy, this is, like, another one where it's, like, every time you read about this stuff, you read about him. He's, like, I gave people nicknames by their, like, thing. So, for example, to me, Michael E. Selma was, like, the acetylcholine king, because I always bump into, like, 7 of his papers every time I read about acetylcholine, and he'll definitely be cited multiple times in my actual paper. And when I saw people talking about acetylcholine, usually he was mentioned, like, at least one time in the paper. So, like, he's an example of someone who I'm definitely going to cite. This guy, yeah, this is, like, the sharp wave ripple guy, kind of. This guy, he's, like, where is he? He's, like, I think he's also kind of a sharp wave ripple guy. And he's the hippocampus guy. And then we have LTP. This, I'm going to put an emoji for, like, where's the OG. I'm really happy that I have this paper in here. It's a really, really good paper and backs what I'm talking about so much. But I also kind of need an OG for this one. It's really, I feel like it was good practice for me to read. When I was reading papers, I did, like, I observed, I think I mentioned this before, but did a lot of observation of how other people, like, what other people were doing in their papers, and, like, who are they citing, and, stuff like that. And it's just the little things. Like, I wasn't constantly, like, aware of it, but I did see, like, how many papers did they cite? How did their citations tend to look? Stuff like that. And that's kind of was helpful, because it's like, I want to emulate them. So, see, this is one place where Michael E. Selma will most definitely be mentioned. We already have him, so I'm going to be like, this one. There might be another, like, OG person, but I don't think it matters so much for that. I just think there's some places where people have really, like, they made, like, a theory. So, like, you should get the person who did the theory. This is another place where there's the theory of U-shape. I used to remember, like, I actually learned at one point, somebody invented this theory of U-shaped arousal. I'm actually going to hunt down their name again, because I read it in this paper. Yerkes Dodson law. I'm going to write that so I can find it. I never read the original paper, but that's what it's called. It's Yerkes Dodson. So I never actually read the original paper, but probably should be mentioned. And then this is one of my favorite people. I've developed, like, internal relationships to certain papers and to certain authors that I'm like, these are my favorites. And this is one of my favorite authors in the of all of the papers that I read. This is probably one of the best and most important papers of my whole study. And then I found out that the author is actually a woman, and that made me happier. This is her. It was such a good paper, and I'll show you guys the paper. It was so informative. Emotional arousal and memory binding, an object-based framework. If you are, like, somehow, like, studying trauma or whatever, I highly recommend this paper. This was such a good paper, and it informed me so much. Like, I probably took some of the most notes on this paper. Ironically, it kind of, like, this kind of makes sense in the context of my paper, but this is one of the ones I remember the most. Like, I remember specific anecdotes and everything. Perhaps it was more arousing. It was, like, medium arousal, so it was very well consolidated for me. But yes, so that's what I learned from the paper. But I remember very specific anecdotes from this. It was a very, very good paper. And yes, I always get happy when I see it. But yes, highly recommend this paper. I don't know if there's like to me, this person was like, you know how there's like the acetylcholine king? This is like the arousal queen to me. But I don't know, like, I don't want to be fake. Like, I don't want to seek things out that I need to, you know what I mean? But like, is this the OG? I think so. I don't know. Maybe not. She mentioned other people. She mentioned these people. It might have been hard to read this. They might have good information, but this is really interesting. I need to read this. This is for another time, but this is so interesting. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. This is such a segue, but these two authors were mentioned in that paper that I read. Participants exposed to misinformation were significantly more likely to endorse false information during memory testing. In the stress group, however, memory accuracy and misinformation effects were moderated by arousal experience during encoding of the negative event. Misinformed stress group participants who reported that the negative slideshow elicited high arousal during encoding were less likely to endorse misinformation for the most aversive part of the story and had better memory for components of the. So stress and high arousal elicited by a negative event act concomitantly during encoding to enhance emotional memory such that the most aversive aspects of the event are well remembered and subsequently more resistant to information effects. I also think this is pretty interesting because I don't know, I need to actually like think thoroughly, but there is this really big you would think, like, you know, when I talked about the fantasy model, you might look at it and be like, what? Like, there are a lot of people that I don't know if they would put it in terms of this specific framework, but they do share ideas that sometimes that some of these elements, things are, how do you say it? Iatrogenic. That they basically think that dissociation is not real, not actually like a real thing that's happening, but basically about high fantasy proneness or suggestibility, role playing, or social cultural influences. This is like my enemy of a theory. I hate this theory. I'm sorry. I feel bad because people wrote it or whatever, but it's like, I hate this theory. I think it's the dumbest theory ever, but a lot of people believe it. I'm sorry. I just think it's so freaking stupid, but whatever. Anyways, but you would think, like, you know, I've never heard of that or something, or it's like, it's not like a prominent thing, but it is prominent enough that there's extensive amounts of paper actually asking this question. And is it trauma or fantasy based, talking about dissociative identity disorder and all these different things. I kind of forget that I'm doing this, and then like this is like my enemy model, because it mentally it just mentally like is like kind of psychologically impacted me, that like it's not just the model itself, but just the general idea running through psychology that stop people from actually getting more informed and actually like looking into the disorder. This is the thing that really bothers me. A lot of people see things like dissociative identity disorder, more like, you know, severe dissociative disorders or dissociation, recovered memory, as false. A lot of people haven't actually read thoroughly and looked at people who are actually expert in this, in the phenomenon that much. They haven't read like theory of structural dissociation, parts theory, internal family systems, and people are so misinformed. A lot of people, even people who have been like significantly, you know, they've been doing psychology their whole lives, and it's so dumb to me. Not the people, but like just the theory, as someone who dealt with this exact experience, and it was so annoying that I literally went into this whole entire thing. But I was even reading one paper on, it was a paper from literally like last year, talking about different, I'll try to link it below. I've talked about this paper a few times, but they talked to different clinicians who basically had worked with people with these kind of dissociative disorders, dissociative identity disorder, whatever, and looking at what actually worked and what didn't, and all these different things. And it was very, very instructive. People who didn't have a good kind of thorough understanding of how dissociation actually, you know, things like the theory of structural dissociation. Actually, let me find the paper.
they just had a really hard time in therapy with these patients. And then they also were more likely to develop kind of like vicarious trauma and vicarious kind of dissociation and stuff, because they just didn't really know how to handle the intricacies of that, because it's a complex thing. And people who had actual experience and stuff like internal family systems and stuff, like they had a much easier time. And there was even one guy in it who did not believe in dissociative identity disorder, which I'll tell you, like, I believe in it. I haven't met somebody with it because it's a rare disorder, but I do believe it because I believe my experience. And I just don't think it's that crazy. But anyways, if by chance someone with dissociative identity disorder is watching this, bro, I do not think it's fake. I don't understand why people think that, but I don't know. It's kind of crazy. But anyways, I think a lot of people just don't understand how badly that type of chronic and intense trauma will mess you up inside. Or I had a few months of it and it shook me to my core and it changed the way I move through the world so drastically. To this day, I'm still recovering. Genuinely, like I was like, I had to learn to walk again because I got so, like, my body is so dissociated when I leave the house that I kind of walk weird, even because like I'm just starting to fix this. I'm so outside of my body when I leave the house that I noticed that I was not feeling my feet on the ground, and I was just feeling like really, really tense in my own body. And I've been recently, when I walk, being really intense. My feet weren't touching the ground. Like my feet were like, instead of like this, I was like really, it was almost like I was so anxious that like I felt like I was like flying as I walked, and my feet were like this. And so many of the effects of dissociation were going away, but I had to remind myself actively when I went outside. It's not 24/7, but it's like after a long day, it actually gets worse throughout the day, where in the morning I feel fine. And by the end of the day, especially if I've had a weird day, I'm doing that. And like, I think it's because the stress just builds through the day without me noticing. And I'm like kind of holding it in because I'm not that like, I'm getting better, but I'm not processing as much. And I noticed that I was like, the other day, I was like, wait a freaking minute. My feet are not flat right now. My body is so stressed that it's like I'm like curled up as I walk. It's really weird, but I just recently was like, I've been practicing when I go outside, feeling the fact that my feet are on the floor, and it's really been helping me, like grounding as I walk. Because I would just feel really, really stressed out. But why was I talking about this? Anyways, dissociation is crazy. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So I think people who haven't dealt with it, or who haven't dealt with patients that have this type of trauma, have zero clue how badly it will impact you on the inside and how much you will leave your own body. And trauma is so freaking weird. I went through oh my gosh. I keep being back and forth about talking about my dissociative like experiences, because it's like, it's like you try to avoid stigma a little bit, but it's like, yeah, I had a lot of different like weird stuff that like just over time it took a lot of healing. So I would never doubt anybody who said that they, like explaining dissociative identity disorder. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. And when you read like the theory of structural dissociation, you actually get immersed in the literature about how dissociation work. It makes so much sense. Like, it's not crazy, but people just don't have that type of awareness. So if I just wanted to say that, because sometimes in my videos I'll be like, I believe it's real, and it's like, I don't think it's an opinion. Like, I'm not being like, it's like, oh, do aliens exist? We never know, but like, yes or no. I'm like, yes, it does. That's my mentality straight away. Like, I'm not trying to act like it's some kind of controversial thing, but I'm just like, yeah. But anyways, but it was pretty interesting. I think I can't remember if I mentioned it now, but they were talking here about these one therapist. This one, highly recommend this one too, was basically talking about how he didn't believe in it. And he also thought it was like an iatrogenic, I never know how to say it, condition. I'm going to learn to say it because it's like important. But then he saw somebody actually have an alter switch in therapy. People have such a cartoonish perception of dissociative identity disorder. It's insane. Like, I think people have this very, very cartoon relationship to it, where it's like very Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. If you read, I would say that I'm going to link some text below for anyone who just happens to be passively interested. But these two authors, they worked together a lot over a long period of time. They worked with people with really severe prolonged trauma, people who had like really, really severe trauma, and they did a lot of really cool work they're like my favorites. Like, they're like one of my favorite names in psychology. I really, really like them. and the stuff that they write. But they talk about, they have really, their theories just make so much sense. And there's like a lot of different theories that are kind of branching off this one. I don't know who said it first. I kind of feel like they were some of the original, because I think they made up there's the apparent normal part, which is like your normal day-to-day functioning part, and then emotional parts that split off from your normal self, and they're kind of unintegrated. And they kind of placed this entire thing on a spectrum from, just normal, no dissociation, to PTSD, to like CPTSD, to stuff like dissociative identity disorder. And I think their theories make so much sense. And when you read it through this framework, it's like, what's the mystery? What is the mystery? Like, I think their work is great, and they have great, I really want to read their book. I was looking today and I'm like, I'm going to buy it. The Haunted Self. Yeah. Well, anyways, it's pretty insane to me that there's like a whole group that's like a whole group of people in psychology, and people aren't like all writing it, but their idea is pervasive that this whole thing is fake. And I just think it's so misinformed, and it's not well backed, and it's not anything. And you would think, like, because I don't think it's like a popular name per se, unless you're kind of more into dissociation. That being said, it's pervasive enough that it's like, I feel like they got into everybody's heads. You get me? And there's like there's an entire, meta-analysis, which shows you how big this was. I think it's absolutely insane, but unfortunately, people really it's weirdly too legitimate for the fact that there's no backing really to it, and there's so much backing to the idea that this is all like coming from trauma. But I'll link some of these below. I highly recommend it. I think it's absolutely insane, but I don't think, that being said, like, I understand their concerns, but the concerns are just signs that we need to do more work. And that's the thing that really gets me. It's just like, yeah, I've mentioned this 1,000 times. It's like the theme of the series, but if you're confused about something, do more research. Don't tell people to stop doing research and that it's fake. And it kind of irks me personally, because it's like, a lot of, like, this is not female specific. A lot of people struggle with all this. That being said, I think anything with sexual abuse or sexual trauma, people just stop. They don't want to do more work. They don't want to look further in. The more complex you get and the more complicated and twisted, I feel like people aren't, I don't know if it's just people don't want to do the work, and it's like more niche kind of groups of people that would even be willing to do that work, or I think there's a social stigma personally, because we can see this in society, the Epstein files, the everything, right? Like, we see the stigma in society that people do not want to face sexual abuse. And I genuinely think that's one of the big reasons that we do, anytime there's like a sexual abuse issue, people are like, what if it's fake though? And what if everyone is lying? It's like the gaslighting is so deep to the point that people are like, yeah, should we actually be doing more research on this? Or should we be telling this large group of people with this experience in psychology that their experience is actually fake and they're just getting influenced by society? It's insane. I'm like, how many people, like, how collective of a psychology do people have to have? Like, the idea that there's some kind of collective psychology of people that just want to have trauma, years worth of trauma of sexual abuse that they just completely made up, is insane. How many people, what are the thought process, like, what are the experiences that would lead you to, like, that's so psychologically heavy. And it happens. I'm not saying it's always false, but to think that so many people would have that as some element of their internal, like, working and their internal psychology, I think is pretty insane. That people are just making up years of trauma, like, just cause, and they just want to be in pain. And it's like, nobody does. So it's just kind of insane, I think. And it's so overblown. And it doesn't mean that people never do it, but I'm like, that idea is so overblown to be so pervasive that people are even asking this question. The question is obviously, get out of your own whatever and go do more research. Obviously. And it's just, yeah, but I was saying it's kind of triggering, because not triggering like trauma triggering, but like kind of like, that's so annoying, because that is the exact same mentality that people have towards so many women's health issues. And I do think that there's some element of misogyny underlying this. And a lot of the people who really heavily endorse this and write extensive papers on it and have based their whole career on it are men. I'm just going to say it. they are men. And I do think that that's an element, and that is the mentality that we have stretched across any kind of feminine issue, anything that we even perceive as feminine, because I do think that people, it shouldn't be this way, but I do think that people see sexual abuse as somewhat feminine. And I think a lot of men feel that stigma too, again, speaking about the sexual abuse that they've dealt with. It's always, are you sure you're not faking it? Are you sure you're not making it up? Are you sure you're not just wanting attention? Are you sure it's not any women's health issue? We're talking hormonal issues, like menstrual issues, cramps, birth, pregnancy. Like, it doesn't really hurt that bad. Like, I've seen so many issues of doctors talking to pregnant women and being like, it really doesn't hurt that bad and stuff. And we're like, you're not actually dilated. You're not having the baby yet. You can't because it doesn't hurt enough and all this stuff. And then the person has a baby like 8 freaking minutes later or something. And I think that there's that little story that we spread to anything feminine, any kind of feminine kind of diagnosis issue. Again, men have this too, but I do think that we've feminized sexual abuse because it is a lot, women do experience sexual violence in very large numbers. And there's always, check any kind of women's health issue, you will get somebody who's trying to say that people are kind of like, it's overblown, people are faking it and all this stuff. And again, I know they probably exist, but the main names that I've seen in the fantasy model that are super like large proponents of it are all men. I'm just saying. So that's the other reason that it just irks me. And I'm like, we need to stop as a whole spreading this idea that women or anybody feminine having a feminine issue or whatever is making it up. And this is the thing, is they say, you're making it up. Let's stop doing work on it. And it just irks me. Stop saying that. Stop it. Do more research and stop sounding stupid. Stop. And it's just like, I think there's so many discoveries to be made in women's health. And again, this isn't simply a women's health issue, but I'm just saying, I think there's misogyny behind this idea because there's this concept in any feminine issue. And yeah, I just think any women, there's so many discoveries to be made in women's health. I want more female scientists to go after health issues of their own. Like if you like endometriosis or like, anything like that, there's so many discoveries to be made and people don't see them as impactful and groundbreaking. And I think that's why men don't go after it. Cause it's like, well, it's just women's health. Who cares? Right. I will find it groundbreaking. Anything that people talk to me about women's health, I'm like, you are like like insane to me. Like, I think you're the coolest person. Go do more women's health research because this is too frequent. And it's because there's too many men doing too much botched science through a bias. That is my personal opinion. But anyways, it's pretty insane. Yeah, I just think it's pretty insane how big it is. But the reason I was even mentioning that was I went on a whole tangent, but yeah, I think that this is going back to that paper that I was just looking at. Yeah, there's just this little, I don't know, there's just this idea that people who have been through trauma or who are saying that they've been through something severe are just like they're not good sort of narrators. But this meta-analysis that I read as well backed very well that actually there were some that actually showed that people were even like less likely to make up a memory. Like I'm gonna link it below. That's something that I might actually cite in my paper, but I mean definitely the paper. But I think I'm gonna maybe even mention that idea. I don't know actually if I will. I don't know if it's relevant enough, but I found it pretty interesting. I highly recommend people reading all these things that I'm mentioning and just getting more educated on dissociative disorders because they are they're not as like cartoony as I think the average person imagines. And if you read stuff like the theory of structural dissociation, it's very, very nuanced. There's like a lot of nuance actually to dissociative identity disorder. And sometimes like these are things I've read from these authors' writings themselves. Sometimes people can kind of be in these mid switches and all these different things. These are the two papers that really talked about it and talked about how nuanced it is. It's a very nuanced disorder. Dissociative identity disorder is, and it's not as simple as people imagine it. So I think everybody should get more educated because it's also very frequently misdiagnosed with stuff like schizophrenia and bipolar and all sorts of other stuff. So I just think it's worth getting to know the disorder from a more educated lens versus what we think that it is. But let's just see who else needs like a big name attached. They need their big name attached. I already know the name. I think it's Frey and Morris, but I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but I think that's who it is. I've been trying to pat myself on the back recently, and I think sometimes I don't think about how traumatizing that whole situation was, and I don't talk to people about it that often because it's like, how often does that really come up in conversation? And it's just kind of like, I just haven't had the reason to talk about it in like a long time, except for in this project context. But I've been trying to give myself a pat on the back because after I spoke about it on my video yesterday, I was like, man, that was actually insane. And it's insane how mentally ill I was. It's insane that I'm still recovering. And sometimes on the content, like going back to the same concept of stigma, it's like sometimes we stigmatize ourselves. And I think I very frequently sometimes I see my own mental illness as a very like personal issue. Like, oh, you're just weird or you're just this, where it's like my body has to work so overtime to live, to like exist. And I feel like I get through stuff like this by really diminishing on other things that are maybe more enjoyable or whatever that I used to enjoy that now take a lot of energy. And I just have to really budget my energy a lot, and it's getting better. But this project actually helped me so much to find closure and all that. But yeah, I just feel like I was like, I need to give myself a pat on the back because I feel full of myself. But like, this is actually very important work, and it's very sad that more people don't do it, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody wants to do it. And it took me so awkward. It took a lot of emotional strength to actually do this. And I really I think about the fact that I really take for granted that for some people, something like that would have really knocked them off their feet for like a very, very long time. And I mean, it did knock me off my feet, and I still feel a little bit wobbly on my feet, like I literally mentioned, but like literally, but also metaphorically. But I think sometimes I'm really grateful that this is gonna hopefully radiate out into other people's lives and like improve their lives. And I just feel like there's a big population of people that really need this work. And it just took me like a lot of strength to do this with my own trauma and everything. And it's kind of special. So I was like, I need to give myself a pat on the back as well. Because it's not often, like, this is the frustrating thing I think about psychology. And that's why I really want to talk about kind of like the power dynamics within psychology. Is like, so often psychology is I think that people with actual mental illness usually are in a position of lower power, even within research and psychology itself, because they're usually subjects. And I feel like my work really it like really disrupted that barrier between researcher and person being researched, where I was both. And I think that disrupted the power dynamic that I think was really aggravating, like these issues in dissociation where people were like, are you sure? I don't think so. And like, but you can't see in their head. So you don't actually know. And this is the thing, is that most of the time when people tell you about their disorder, like you take note, right? You're like, okay, this is what's happening. And that person's experience is a very important element of how people understand the disorder. But when it came to this particular disorder, the thing is that people were overwriting other people's experiences, where they were telling people like, this is what's happening. And instead of being like, okay, I'm taking notes and we're going to do research on that, they're like, I'm actually overwriting your experience with like the fact that it's like, it's fake, it's not real. I don't think that you actually did do that. And like, I just think the experience was getting really overwritten by a certain power dynamic where mentally ill people were kind of in a lower power position there, where like you're not a good enough translator of your own life. And that really impacted the way that people did research. And I think it was really special to be able to not, like, obviously I'm researching myself essentially, and I don't have that power dynamic in myself, except for a voice that I had to unwrite. And I think that's why I was actually able to get it done, because it's like, oh, I'm skeptical, I don't know about that. And like people were just looping and circling in this, like, it's controversial, is it real, is it not real? And it's like, it absolutely is real. If not, like, I'd just be lying to myself. And like, I needed to navigate it as real to heal. And I think that gave me like a special insight, that I think this particular issue needed the insight of someone who was actually going through the situation and was actually a survivor. And I don't think that it would have gotten done for probably a very long time if somebody, it needed to be someone who's like, I believe you, I'm not going to overwrite your experience, and I'm going to actually take note of your experience and really, there's a lot of people who do that in like within this realm, but I think a lot of people don't. And that was really frustrating because I feel like it was hampering people's motivation to actually dig deep and actually listen. And so I feel like it was a very special position that I took within this work of my own story and thought process and everything that needed to subvert that power dynamic or of the researcher and the researched, or like patient and more knowledgeable therapist, where it's like I didn't have that. And I think that's been a really special position to take in my work. And I think it's really showing, it's just really shown through my work that's like, it's like that I believe you energy, and like I'm listening and everything, where it's like I needed to have that energy towards myself. And it was very healing and special to use science as a way of like taking that back and really supporting myself and believing myself. Because I just went through a period, I did go through a period of time where I was constantly like, am I fake? Am I lying? Am I this? Am I that? And I was like, the more that I get in this thought process, the more messed up I feel. But the more I actually believe myself, the more I heal and the more integrated I feel. So there must be something to believing myself. And let's see if I keep believing myself, like, where can I go? And I went here. And I still to this day have that little circle in my head where it's like, is this real? Is this not? Even though I know it is real, but again, it was like, first I got gaslit, then it was like, it's hard when somebody kind of grabs the story and they won't tell you what happened to your own self. And it's like, bro, it's my freaking life. Like, you gotta tell me, but like they don't want to tell you because they don't want you to actually be aware of what happened to you, right? Is what happened to me. And which is really disturbing. But that's essentially what happened. And yeah, it just really distorted me. And I was just like, what happened to me? I have nobody to ask and all this different stuff. And it's really to this day very psychologically bizarre and weird and all this stuff. And then it just messes you up. Okay. But anyways, I was like, I need to believe myself to heal and everything. And yeah, I don't know. Actually, I feel like I've kind of forgot where I was going, because I'm going to leave like all this heavy processing hopefully here today. This project has been like, I feel like there's just been so many different waves of processing and healing, and just like, whoa, like just thinking about it from so many different perspectives, from like, what I was going to say is that I look at this now and I'm like, there's just absolutely no way that at 24 with no degree I would do this if I wasn't telling the truth about my experience. You know what I mean? Where it's like, what? I wouldn't just magically do this if I didn't know my body. And I think that's been like trippy, and like, oh, like, so my experience is real. And I don't know, just like, it's just been kind of like, it's healing, but there's just different waves of it, of like, there's so much to sit with here, and just like, this is kind of crazy and stuff. But yeah, I don't know, it's kind of been a weird emotional day. I think I'm going to edit this video because I kind of want to time cap, like, I want to like put a box on this day of processing, and I want to get back in like a lighter energy. But I think just talking about it yesterday was like, that was, I was like, okay, like, we're talking about this, like, gonna let it all out, that's chill. And it's like, but then I think when I saw that person's face, it was like so out of the blue. Sometimes I'm like, what is life? Like, it just kind of threw me off. And then I think, okay, well, that means that's the end of today, and it's like the end of this study session. But I actually did do a lot of work today, and I keep being like, oh my God, it's not getting done. But every time I sit down to work on it, it actually does get better. So yeah, I think I'm just going to end this video because I don't want to bring this triggered energy into tomorrow's day of work. It's like the triggered energy is staying in this video. Okay, we're putting like we're putting like, it's in a jar, we're putting a lid on it, and I'm just going to wake up tomorrow definitely feeling much better. Kind of random work day, but I did get a lot done. So yeah, the next thing I'm going to try to do is read these papers right here, synaptic tagging capture. Yeah, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. And then I think the good thing is, only thing is, I think the place cells need to go somewhere here. Probably near the top, actually. I think I should talk about them. Yeah, no, this has been too triggered of a day. Like, now it's like, okay, the fun got... I was in such a good mood today, too. And, like, I feel like it kind of sopped the vibe. I think the place cells need to go, like, down here. And I think those are the big names that we need. We got this guy, we got this guy, we need this guy. Is this gonna be, I don't know if I even need to cite him, or if he's just like a given, like he's kind of implied. I don't really know. We have maybe these people. We have Michael Ihesomo. Oh wait, where's Placels? We have John O'Keefe. You know what I always think about energy? I'm like, you should always give people the energy that you want, right? So I'm like, if somebody gave me a certain energy, I'm like, I'm gonna assume that you would want it back. I'm gonna assume that you'd be very, very happy to have it back, because if you gave it to me, like, you should be more than happy to have it too, right? If not, like, you shouldn't give it to me, right? So we're gonna edit this video, we're gonna post it, and I'm gonna, with love and light, I'm gonna return the energy of that person gave to me. Like, it's yours. Take it back, okay? We're working on ourselves. Thank you for the journey that you sent me on. Thank you for making me a scientist. Thank you for sending me down the path of psychology. Thank you for all the lessons I learned from your place in my life. Thank you for giving me strength. Thank you for making me all these different things, for really testing me, and thank you that I overcame and all this stuff. And obviously, like, this is energy that you seem to really like because you give it to other people. All that trauma energy must be something that you really like, you want, because, like, right, you wouldn't give it to others if it wasn't something that you felt good about, right? So I'm gonna give it back to you. You take it now. It's yours. You have fun with it. You navigate it. I navigated it plenty, and I think I'm good, and I'm done with it, and, like, I'm chill. And I learned my lessons from it, and I think it's, like, your time to learn your lessons from it. And, like, back to you, my guy. Back to you, my friend. It's all yours. You know, anything you put out into the world, you should be happy to have it back. So it's yours. Once we're finished this video, okay, everybody, let's do, like, a little, like, energetic release. All of it is going into the video. Droopy, my dude, take the vibe back that you gave to me, and thank you for the freaking paper. It's been a journey. And with that, yeah, we're done. I'm gonna edit it. It's all going in here, the jar. Energetic release. All love and light. I've been trying to work on, like, from my Buddhist perspective, from my like Christian perspective, just being like, you know, we should always wish compassion on people. And I think that compassion is great. This is, like, my central idea, like, you know, not idea that I made up, but, like, my central, like, learning, I think, because everything is, like, you know, when you take it like that, everything is there for us to learn, for us to heal and grow from, all these different things. And it helped me to reflect on compassion a lot in Buddhism, and what does it mean to be compassionate. Compassion is really more difficult than one might think. And it really did send me on this whole exploration, spiritual exploration, that I am grateful for. And obviously, Mr. Droopy would love to have it back, I think, because it's been great for me to heal. So you take it. But I think that compassion is incredibly difficult. And that's one of the biggest challenges within all spiritualities. I was actually reading my little devotional book today and thinking about how all religions inspire us to be compassionate even to people that we struggle with. And I think that I sat with that idea a lot and came out of it realizing that compassion is strength, because it helps you to see people for who they really are. They're not, you know, these, like, super villain kind of energy people, even if they want to act like that, even if they have a power dynamic that they want you to see them like that, because it makes them feel good about themselves. They're sad, and they're creepy, and they look like Droopy, and they look like a clown, and they're weird. And you know, also that's a lifetime of suffering and bad karma that they have to deal with, that they're constantly putting that type of energy on other people. And I always think about the fact that if you're constantly traumatizing other people, that means you're constantly around people's pain and people's negative energy and people's suffering and all this stuff all day. And, like, that's the contents of your life, is just that kind of suffering and intensity and pain. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily painful for you, but personally, I think that's really dark, and, like, that's the contents of your life is really weird. I would never want to be around people's, like, trauma all the time to that degree unless I was helping them through their suffering. You know, I wouldn't want to be constantly inflicting pain on people and sending that energy out into the world. And that helped me with my compassion journey too, of, like, that's really, like, that's dark, and I'm sorry that's the life that your brain, also neuroscience gave me compassion, that your brain is just like, there's something going on up here that made that the life for you, and I'm sorry that that's how you were born, and I'm sorry that that's the life that you're living, and that's really sad, and that's really weird. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not like a, oh my God, you're like a scary villain, I'm terrified of you. So many stories, so many little stories to tell for the memoirs. But yeah, it's like, yeah, you really want me to see you like that, but, like, when I actually came through the healing and when I actually sat with the spiritual journey, it made me realize that, like, you're just really sad inside, and you're not a big shot. You just
are neurologically messed up. And also, yeah, it's just like weird, right? So yeah, that's kind of been my lesson. And that's given me strength. Does my body feel that all the time? No, I still get triggered. I still get angry and everything. And I'm going to go do like self-care now. But I just wanted to end the video on that. That's been like my main like journey, and just being like, it sucks. Is like your mind feels that kind of power that your body sometimes doesn't. But my body will catch up over time, and that's the beauty. Is like I'll keep growing and I'll keep getting better and I'll keep healing and I'll keep doing all these things. I'll keep uncovering my own memories. I'll keep healing from the dissociation, all this stuff. And it's like you're always gonna be sad and creepy, or not. I hope God leads you down a path that like you become a good person. If that happens, like I'm happy for you. I don't know. It's like that'd be great. You know, if you decided to sit with all the darkness in yourself, it's not gonna happen, I don't think, but that's not for me to know, not my business. But yeah, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like sending you the energy you gave me back to you with love, so that you can sit with it. Like it's yours, not my energy, not my problem, not my vibe anymore. So I'm healing, and I will always be getting better, and I'll always be getting smarter, and I will always be doing more work for people with trauma, and I'll always be writing more, and I'll always be just feeling better about myself with every year, and stronger, and yeah, and it's like that's such a gift. And yeah, you take it now. Anyways, okay, now the jar is closed. It's like energetically sealing the video. This is the energetic vibe that I want to put into this video, because I like doing that kind of stuff too, like magic and rituals. Like this is the vibe. We're putting it into the world like that, and let's send that compassion out to the people that have harmed us, and just like, I'm sorry that you're so sad. I'm sorry that you're so weird. You take the vibe back. It's not my issue. And all of us will heal, and all of us will grow and do better in life, right? Yes? Okay, everybody, support group. Let's send all the energy back, and let's send it back with love and light and compassion. Okay, the end.